and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And just a note before we get started to our free speech viewers and for our monitors on the soup. Free speech is in pledge mode until October 5th. So during those 3 weeks, Gay USA will air Fridays at 10, Saturdays at 11, Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll resume our regular schedule on October 6th.
And since you mentioned the soup, let's talk about them for a second so they don't have to watch the whole show if they don't want to. They used a clip of ours again last week, and I have to reply. Because what they used was a clip of me reading a list of gay losers at the Emmys, which concluded with you saying to me something like, no closet cases. And I said, well, maybe Edie Falco. Not that I know for sure one way or the other. And Joel McHale went into this big condemnation of us for outing people. And I just want to say, Joel, you do a half hour every week of nothing but outing celebrities for their various secrets nonstop. You have some nerve condemning us for reporting on people's sexual orientation.
And here on Gay USA, we don't call it outing, we call it reporting.
And we don't consider it a slur.
No, because there's nothing wrong with it.
Exactly.
Right?
So on with the show.
All right. So in the headlines, the United States Supreme Court is going to discuss by the end of this month whether to take any of 7 same-sex marriage cases. And Justice Ginsburg spoke out on the issue this week, and we'll discuss that.
Very interesting possible permutations. And in the U.S. Congress, gay Representative Jared Polis, I'm sorry, we've outed him, Joel, has filed a discharge petition on a new version of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act.
We have lots of progress to report on in Florida.
And several other places, too. But not so much progress with Facebook, which has been enforcing its policy that you have to use your real name in your Facebook account. This is not sitting well with drag queens whose profiles are being deleted.
A big web filter service has finally dropped its blocking of LGBT advocacy groups.
Big, great news on the MacArthur so-called Genius Awards. Several LGBT winners, including some friends of this show. We're really happy to announce those.
You may know about the closet cases. Police are aided by Twitter users in apprehending suspects in a gay bashing in Philadelphia.
It's quite a story.
New technology.
Yeah. And sad news from Serbia, where a German gay activist who was attending a conference there was brutally attacked, but protests from the German government helped and could help LGBT people in Serbia.
The African nation of Chad has adopted its first anti-gay law, and it is a doozy.
And speaking of a doozy, 2 straight men have married each other in New Zealand to win a contest.
How can that be?
Open to all. But let's start with the Supreme Court.
Well, just as we taped last week, the news arose that the Supreme Court has scheduled for its September 29th conference a discussion of 7 same-sex marriage cases from 5 states, Indiana, Oklahoma, Utah, Virginia, and Wisconsin. So what they do is they discuss them.
In private. They meet privately among themselves to discuss what cases they're going to take.
They don't have to tell us what they did. Now, if they decide to take any of the cases at that conference, all you need is 4 justices saying we want to take one of the cases, and that puts it on the calendar.
Or 2 of the cases, or all of the cases.
Right. Then it goes on the calendar, and
for oral arguments.
Normally gets decided by the end of June, but they don't even have to do that.
Right.
So we may not know about this. It's a secretive process.
Well, there are various things that could happen, and Justice Ginsburg weighed in on this in a speech in Minneapolis. She was asked about it, and she threw out some of the possibilities.
Without discussing the merits of the case.
Of course. But as she pointed out, and as we've pointed out to you, all these 7 cases that have been filed with the Supreme Court agree with each other. Every single one of these cases, the judges, the federal judges, the appeals courts, overturn marriage bans in those states. So technically, the Supreme Court may decide, well, there's no question for us here. These states all agree, the courts all agree, we don't have to step into this, because really we only decide a few cases of the many that are submitted to us, and this one may not rise to that level. But
she said, if she mentioned the Sixth Circuit, which is handling the Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee cases, and she said if they disagree with the other circuits, there will be some urgency if the court allows the ban to stand there. And she said there is no rush if they uphold the overturning of the bans by the lower courts.
Well,
but Art Leonard, our pal, the legal scholar, gay legal scholar, said, what about the urgency of all those couples who have had their marriages on hold through these stays imposed by the Supreme Court in many cases?
All these courts overturn the marriage bans, but through a mixture of orders from the Supreme Court and from the courts themselves that decided, none of those states are allowing same-sex marriage at this point because they are on hold. They are stayed pending Supreme Court decision. So when Ginsburg said no rush to decide if they all agree, yes, everybody went, whoa, what do you mean no rush to decide? But the tea leaf reading that is going on with that is, well, she didn't really mean that that they would just let this go on indefinitely. What she probably meant to say was that if they do all agree, what we will ultimately do is deny these cases. We will deny the writs of certiorari, and that will lift the stays, and people will be able to get married in all those states.
That's
because
true.
The Supreme Court has said we're not going to review these cases. We're going to let those decisions stand. So September 29th they meet. No guarantee that they'll announce anything. No guarantee they'll decide anything. They may sit there and say, all right, here's what's going on now. We're just bringing each other up to date. We'll wait and see what the Sixth Circuit does. We'll wait and see what the Fifth Circuit does in Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas. They could be the joker in the deck here.
What Justice Ginsburg is really waiting for is the premiere of a comic opera called Scalia Ginsburg. And this is a true story, that will debut in Virginia next year based on Ginsburg's very close relationship and bonding over opera with Antonin Scalia, the Antichrist.
Yes. She did say that if she could be anything in life, it would be a diva.
She also said something serious, although not that she's not serious about opera. She said, having people close to us say who they are, that made the attitude change in this country.
Yes.
About gay stuff.
Yes.
Which is fairly obvious, but true.
Yes. Now, meanwhile, as these cases are working their way through the courts of appeals and being stayed and asking the Supreme Court to decide, a couple of small developments. Indiana the appeals court said that Indiana must recognize, and Indiana has agreed that they will recognize, one marriage of a lesbian couple that happened in Illinois.
This is in Whiting, these women live.
Because one of the women is dying of ovarian cancer. So while the rest of same-sex marriages are on hold in Indiana and recognition of out-of-state marriages is on hold, this one couple will be recognized.
That seems to be the entry-level drug for a lot of these states, which is people about to die and all that kind of stuff.
And it's happening in Arizona, too.
Even in New York City, the first domestic partner thing that was ever recognized in New York City was hospital visitation and time off when your partner dies. That's the first, before we got any other rights.
Well, a federal judge in Arizona has ordered the recognition of the marriage of two men who were married in California because one has died, and the widower, the surviving husband, wants the marriage recognized on the death certificate. He wants to be recognized as the surviving husband for various benefits and just for official recognition. And the judge who ordered that this marriage be recognized, I mean, they haven't even gotten to the point in Arizona of an appeals court legalizing, or any court legalizing same-sex marriage, but he has such cases in front of him, and his writing on this case signaled a very clear path to legalizing same-sex marriage in Arizona.
Let's say his name, Judge John Sedgwick.
And the Arizona Republic newspaper, which is the major paper there, editorialized in favor of same-sex marriage.
The Seventh Circuit has stayed its rulings, suspended them essentially in Indiana and Wisconsin. In Puerto Rico, Lambda Legal Defense has filed for summary judgment to end the ban on same-sex marriage. In Wisconsin, judges are granting adoption rights to same-sex couples even though they can't get married there.
Very well. Adoptions have been legal between same-sex couples all over the country, with a couple of exceptions, for many years, long before marriage seemed possible. But a sad story out of New York, where two lesbians were together. One of them gave birth to a child. Then they split, and the court is refusing the request for custody or visitation or recognition of the non-biological mother. They were married and they divorced, but the mother is not getting, the non-biological mother is not getting any parental rights, because the judge claims there's an anomaly in the law where same-sex couples, though equally married as heterosexual couples in New York, do not necessarily have the same right to be recognized as parents. Because when you have a heterosexual couple that's married and a child is born, the law automatically recognizes the husband as the father of the child, whether there is any biological connection or not. It's just the way the law has developed historically to sort of protect the parentage of the child. You assume that the married parents are the parents of the child.
Even if the woman was having an affair.
Exactly. But when you have a same-sex couple, you don't have the same possibility of assumption of the two members of the couple having biologically created the child. So the law, according to him, we will see how this develops, does not make the same automatic assumption of parentage, and therefore the non-biological mother, even though married to the biological mother, does not get the same automatic recognition.
So do they anticipate an appeal in this case or a change in the law?
Not clear yet. This is a new decision, and it's a really ugly divorce and ugly
just when you think you've got everything under control, it's not. On the other hand,
it's a little shocking.
On the other hand, in California, Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill to let parents on birth certificates identify themselves as either mother, father, or just parent. They've updated the birth certificates.
Okay.
All right. Now, some domestic partner things.
Okay.
Now, I don't want to say this wrong. Usually people would say Marietta, but do they say Marietta for Georgia?
Not that I know of.
All right. City employees there.
You'll correct us if we're wrong.
City employees there in same-sex marriages are going to get the same retirement benefits as heterosexual employees. The city council changed the policy 6-1. The city manager said the IRS is requiring this of city governments.
Well, it leads me to wonder whether they are somehow part of the federally insured program and therefore subject to the federal rules. But it seems very strange in a state that does not recognize married same-sex couples to suddenly be giving them benefits.
Right.
Supposedly at the behest of the IRS.
In July, we reported that Allegheny County in Pennsylvania had announced that it would no longer recognize domestic partnerships after June 30th, 2015, but Pittsburgh, the city of Pittsburgh, says they will not drop domestic partner benefits for their employees, as it has continued in New York, but not in other places. And then we get to some of these Florida stories. Boynton Beach, Florida, 4-1 adopted domestic partnerships for municipal employees. They also added gender identity and expression to their non-discrimination law. Hillsborough County, Florida, added sexual orientation and gender identity into their, past its first reading, and are now moving forward on domestic partner benefits. And
Miami-Dade County has approved adding gender identity and expression to their non-discrimination policies.
And Sarasota, Florida, unanimously moved to add gender identity and expression to the non-discrimination law. They added sexual orientation in 2000. It now has to go to its first and second readings, but this is a sign that I think they're going to do it. And then there's Ben & Jerry's. They sent an amicus brief to the Supreme Court supporting same-sex marriage, even though they are not in one.
Maybe they'll move to New Zealand, and more on that later.
Yes.
Astoria, Oregon has adopted a non-discrimination policy for sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression for the city of Astoria and for contractors doing business with Astoria and grantees of the city.
Something New York doesn't do because Mike Bloomberg vetoed it and went to court to stop it.
You're telling me. And Newton, Mass. Has passed a gender identity and expression non-discrimination bill there. Yes. But all of this, this is all great. This is town by town, street by street, house by house. We're passing these non-discrimination laws. But wouldn't it be nice if we had a national law that relieved us of this obligation?
It would be nice as long as the law is as strong or stronger than the ones in the localities.
Well, the localities are passing stronger laws than the national Congress is even contemplating.
Now, we want a comprehensive civil rights law, and the major groups say they're working on that, but they haven't given up on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which only covers employment. But we told you about all the problems with that, including a horrible religious exemption. So Representative Jared Polis modified that to our
out gay rep from Colorado.
Yes, and he now wants to bring it up this year, if possible, through a discharge petition.
Well, yes and no. The Employment Non-Discrimination Act, a heinous bill in its details with this overbroad religious exemption that will take us backwards and other rules about how many employees and everything, passed the United States Senate and went to the House. The House is Republican controlled, does not want to bring it up, which is frankly stupid of John Boehner, because if he passed this bill, he would codify into law all the religious exemptions he wants. So he's crazy not to do it. Nonetheless, he doesn't want to go anywhere near us, so he's burying it. So the Democrats have various agenda items here. Nancy Pelosi has gotten Jared Polis to file this discharge petition with the promise that when it gets to committee, they would narrow the religious exemption. But A, that's going nowhere in the House. B, even if they passed it, because they got enough people to sign on to this, it would have to go back to the Senate as amended, and it's unlikely to pass the Senate.
Well, right now they got 10 people on this petition, and you need 218.
But
to get it to the floor.
The real reason they're doing this is because the midterm elections are 2 months away, or less, 6 weeks, whatever, first week of November. And they want a campaign issue to throw at the Republicans.
Well, we always forced discharge petitions, and we got the votes on the discharge petitions on the New York City Gay Rights Bill because they would never let the bill out of committee. And that got people on the record on where they stood, although they would always say, I just don't want to bypass the committee process. So, but this, and we always got more votes on our discharge petitions every time.
Yes.
So it is a good tactic.
Well, particularly as you saw on the front page story in the New York Times this week, now that the control of social issues has shifted from the Republicans to the Democrats, and the Democrats want to run on social issues, and this is a big one for them.
And the Republicans don't want to talk about them as much.
Exactly. So this is a way to embarrass the Republicans. So meanwhile, we at Queer Nation are continuing our campaign against the current version of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act and pushing for a comprehensive civil rights bill, which Chad Griffin at HRC is now promising they'll push next year, although I suspect they have some involvement with this continuing push for ENDA.
It is a pretty queer nation. That's what I kind of gather from watching The Soup.
And we want to thank HRC for adopting the Queer Nation color scheme in its graphics now of black and yellow, moving on from their blue and yellow former color scheme.
You know, HRC also said they were applying to march in the St. Patrick's Day parade this past week. And we had to tell them, hey, this is our issue. I mean, we're fighting for an Irish LGBT group to march in the Irish St. Patrick's Day parade, whereas the gay group they're allowing to march is an NBC employee group. So we're telling HRC to back up, and they said that they would back up.
Well, here's the deal. The St. Patrick's Day parade announces, oh, we've made a change, and is surprised when that becomes worldwide news. And the deal is, NBC was threatening to back out of being the 90% funder of the St. Patrick's Day parade and the broadcaster of the parade. And so they reached a deal where they said, all right, the NBC gay employee group can march, mainly because they have a banner that just says out at NBC Universal. So the parade organizers...
They've been outed also.
Well, the parade organizers thought, no one will know they're gay because it doesn't say gay on their banner.
Well, they will if they watch The Soup. They know what out means.
But then all the Irish LGBT groups objected, and then NGLTF, the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, put out a press release saying, oh, we're so glad the parade's been opened up. Now we can apply to march. So we wrote a letter to them, to HRC, to GLAAD, to ESPA, everybody saying, excuse me, you don't understand. This is a narrow, limited Irish parade, and it's not appropriate for you to march. It's not a pride
Even though
parade.
half of the military and all the police department and the fire department march.
It's still very narrowly defined. So we wrote in this letter, and then what should happen this week, but HRC puts out a press release saying, we've applied to march. So we called them up and said, what the heck are you talking about? We sent you this letter. So they, much to our amazement, wrote back and said, you're right, we read your letter, your strategy is correct, we will support this. So we said, all right, where's the press release for that? And where is your letter to the parade committee saying we withdraw our application and we support the applications of the Irish LGBT groups?
Now, so while we thought, as Jimmy Durante said, everybody wants to get into the act, the Catholic League wants to get out of the parade. They are not marching. Bill Donahue, you've seen him on TV, sort of looks like Archie Bunker. He'd probably take that as a compliment. He said, if you're going to let this gay group in, that's a cause, and I got a cause too. It's called pro-life, anti-abortion, and but they're not letting his group march. And he said, then all bets are. I'm leaving entirely.
I got no problem with the gays, but you got to let the pro-life groups in.
So the thing is, the Irish LGBT groups are being told, well, you can go on a waiting list because it's all full this year, but now Bill Donahue is gone with his group. They're not saying there's a space for you.
Well, I would call you naive if you thought that equation was going to fly.
Well, how else would we do this work?
We invited, Bill Donahue complained last year that he couldn't get into the Pride Parade. We said, au contraire, Bill, come right in.
We quoted Ann Northrup, be my guest.
And he said, I don't want to go to the training for the marshals.
Oh.
I don't go to training.
Sounds like a whiner.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. You may have heard of Symantec, S-Y-M-A-N-T-E-C. They're an online safe search thing that blocks things to avoid child porn from getting on your computer at a public space or something like that. Well, they're going to stop blocking mainstream LGBT advocacy groups, and they'd conflated these things in the past, unfortunately, and they said their decision is good business.
Okay. I think we should launch into some of these bad violence stories. We told you about the murder of a prominent gay man in Minneapolis, Kelly Phillips, by his ex, Ty Hoffman. Kelly Phillips was an executive of Boston Scientific.
And he was about to marry his new partner, Nathan Bailey.
So there was a big search for the ex, Ty Hoffman, and we have a local news report because Ty Hoffman has been arrested.
Under arrest, Lyle Ty Hoffman is in police custody after being on the run for a month. Someone recognized Hoffman while he was standing and looking at this Arby's drive-through menu at the Southbridge Shopping Center in Shakopee on Thursday. That alert witness tipped off police, and officers were eventually able to arrest Hoffman.
This concerned citizen did everything we asked the public to do. They observed, they reported, kept our officers updated on the location of this individual. Our officers located Ty Hoffman and subsequently took him into custody without incident. He was not armed at the time.
It was one of those things where you see somebody and you say, that has to be him, but he's skinny. You know, for all the pictures that the media's released, he looks like he's maybe a little bit heavy set. You know, he's probably lost 20, 30 pounds. I mean, he looks substantially skinnier than the pictures you've seen.
We're very happy, very pleased. We knew we just had to stay on it and make it a priority case for us and our partners throughout the metro area. And it's a very great relief for a lot of people, family as well.
Hoffman was wanted in connection with the killing of his former romantic and business partner, Kelly Phillips. The shooting happened here at an Arden Hills gas station back in August. Thursday's arrest was an emotional moment for Kelly Phillips' fiance.
I thought I would feel a sense of relief, but it just stirs everything up again, and everything feels really raw and devastating again. I'm glad that I don't have to see pictures on the news anymore of the suspect.
Well, it's a horrible story. As long as we're talking about gay on gay, in Detroit, partner violence turned deadly. A male couple, one threw an accelerant on the other in a domestic dispute, lit it, and burned them both to death.
Terrible.
Awful story.
Yeah.
But in terms of people reporting things, that really helped in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
There was a Center City gay bashing case. 12 people were identified as suspects in this via Twitter. 2 gay men were walking home. 8 to 10 young people bumped into them. There was a verbal confrontation. The attackers asked if they were boyfriends, and then they attacked them. And one of them suffered fractured cheekbone and jawbone and lacerations from his nose to his lip of about 9 inches. So this was Thursday night on 9/11 at 15th and Walnut. So the suspects had posted a picture of themselves having dinner at La Viola restaurant that night, and so people saw this, and
they tracked them down by looking at their Facebook pages where they had posted, their reservation details
and
they
anti-gay slurs.
Yes, and so they got their names and they found them.
Wow,
amazing. The police chief said, I'll take, 200 Twitter detectives over one regular police department guy any day.
Yeah.
So happy about that.
In New Jersey, the U.S. Court of Appeals has upheld the state law against so-called conversion therapy for minors.
Yes.
Although they want to appeal, the other side wants to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Yes. The right wing's argument is that you're violating free speech by denying this, but the court said, you could make a free speech argument, but the state trumps that with their right to regulate medical professionals. So we win, and the ban on conversion therapy for minors is upheld. You want to take them to a church therapist? You go right ahead.
Shall we talk about the Facebook flap?
Sure.
All right. Facebook is now apparently, although not in all cases, mandating we use our real names.
Tell it to Katy Perry.
Yeah. So this is not only a denial of privacy for a lot of people. I know lots of people who don't use their full names or that kind of stuff. But it jeopardizes the accounts of many transgender people who are transitioning, and a lot of drag queens who have their drag names up there on Facebook.
Right.
And now they're being told that they can't do this. So the drag queens threatened a big protest against Facebook, and they got a meeting.
Yes, so we'll see what comes out of that meeting. What Facebook wants them to do is, instead of using regular people pages, it wants them to use fan pages as characters. But they say, you know, we're people and we have friends, not fans. And how dare you tell us who we can appear as on Facebook? And the real motive of Facebook is to gather data so that they can sell it to advertisers. So that's what they're always up to, is trying to mine the data. Nice story from Colorado Springs, Colorado, where a transgender teenager, 16 years old, Scarlett Len, has been elected homecoming princess, queen, something.
Homecoming princess.
At Sand Creek High School.
Scarlett was born Andy and started IDing as a girl this year. The majority of the junior class voted for her as homecoming princess. There were 2 other girls nominated. One was supportive and one who was upset about this.
Generally, the reaction is positive, with a few outliers. In Green Bay, Wisconsin, the local school district there has adopted a new rule that mandates training against anti-LGBT bullying. So that's a good thing.
The Minnesota Vikings, you've heard a lot about the NFL lately, but not this story probably, has reinstated special teams coach Mike Prefer after a 2-game suspension. Prefer is the one who said to Chris Cluey, "We should round up all the gays, send them to an island, and nuke it until it glows," unquote. 2 games for that.
Well, if it had happened today, it might have gotten more. Cyndi Lauper has opened something called the True Colors Residence on West 154th Street in Harlem. 30 studio apartments, an energy-efficient building for LGBT homeless youth 18 to 24, help with job applications. This will be permanent housing. It's studio apartments. So this is a terrific thing.
Here in New York City, at our LGBT center, they've always had a SAGE room for older people for 35 years now, and they've had to fight to maintain this space of their own. There is a SAGE center, there's SAGE Social Services, you can go get meals up there and all that kind of stuff, but they want their own room at the center, and Jerry Hoos is their leader. He's a former member of the Gay Liberation Front from right after Stonewall, so he fought for it, and the two organizations, SAGE and the center, agreed to let them still control their own space.
We are thrilled and moved this week by the announcement of the annual MacArthur Genius Grants.
Well, we're not that moved. We didn't get them. No, go ahead. Then we'd be thrilled.
I'm thrilled.
Yes, I am thrilled too.
For the winners, who are particularly Mary Bonato, the longtime lawyer for the gay and lesbian advocates and defenders in Boston, who won the first civil unions case in Vermont, and then the first marriage case in
2003
in Massachusetts. Very instrumental in helping with the Edie Windsor DOMA case, has been just the most fundamentally important lawyer to our certainly coupledom civil rights for years. Yes. Terrific person, great lawyer, wonderful to have her recognized.
And also Alison Bechtel, who did the Dykes to Watch Out For comic strip for many, many years, and of course wrote the graphic novel Fun Home that was made into a musical. It was at the Public Theater and is headed for Broadway.
Terrific that they both won. And if you go on the MacArthur Grants website, you can see little 3-minute videos of each of them talking about their work and about how thrilled they are to win this grant.
And the other gay one that we know about is Samuel Hunter, who was a playwright. He wrote the play The Whale, which is about a morbidly obese gay man. Good play. I think he won the Pulitzer for it, if I'm not mistaken.
May have.
Anyway.
I was particularly impressed by something Mary Bonato said in her video. We've had in the last year all these fights over taking credit for these marriage cases between the
competing
Olsen boys
books
team
and videos and all that stuff.
And what Mary Bonato said was, so many people have worked for so many years to achieve our civil rights, and everything everyone has done has mattered enormously.
Yes.
And that's so true.
I could name a lot of people, and as Red Buttons would say, never got a dinner.
Well, they just got a MacArthur grant.
They did. And there are the other folks sound like very worthy people as well.
Yep. The transgender teen in Connecticut who's been so abused, the young woman who was in an abusive home and then was incarcerated because social services didn't know what else to do with her, so they put her in prison.
She broke out.
For about 3 minutes.
Just 3 minutes?
Yeah, they found her again, and they put her back in. Poor thing.
This isn't directly gay, but related to our stuff in some ways. I'm a little disturbed that the Air Force is forcing an atheist airman to swear to God in his oath when he's in the service. This is in Nevada. He's told, you either swear and say the oath, or you are out of the military. I can't believe this, but they did change the policy in 2013 to align itself with congressional law that was already in place, which requires this oath. Now,
unbelievable.
Here's a twist. The new nominee for the Department of Defense Counsel in the Air Force
General Counsel
is Gordon O. Tanner, an out gay man. I don't know.
He's been confirmed by the Senate.
Okay.
He's married, he's out, he's an Air Force veteran. We'll see if he does anything about this.
And then in Pennsylvania, something you all need to be aware of, there's a law against the desecration of a venerated object. So a teen, and we're not going to show you this picture, who posed with his crotch in the face of a kneeling statue of Jesus, posted it on Facebook.
Tasteful.
And he faces prosecution.
A couple years in prison.
2 years in juvenile jail. I mean, it's not like he had his penis out or anything in this picture.
He was not undressed.
No.
He was just, having a little fun.
And as I said to Ann before the show, he could argue his penis is a venerated object.
And in Portland, Tennessee, someone has erected a billboard with a quote from Leviticus that, the old, you cannot lie with a man as with a woman. I think we should start a campaign to put up billboards with other quotes from Leviticus, which heterosexual Christians are not so eager to follow.
Do we have a little time to talk about politics and the midterm elections coming up? How are we doing?
Well, we still have international news, AIDS news, and entertainment news, but if you want to take a minute, go right ahead.
The stories, of course, are that we're going to get killed in the midterms and that Obama's ratings are as low as Bush's when the Dems won both houses in 2006. So it doesn't look good. The Senate is on the edge. The House is almost impossible.
Aren't we coming back on this stuff?
Well, I used to always blame redistricting and how the Republicans were very good at getting control in 2010 and making the districts. But there was that study that came out said that redistricting is not really responsible for most Republican control. One of the things that is, and we have to think about this, all the Democratic votes in urban districts are so compacted that these districts, these Democratic urban districts, are 90% Democrat. Yes, so they all have easy wins, but they have no chances in these rural areas.
So a state may actually overall be split fairly evenly, but if all the Democratic votes are in one or two districts, then the Republicans control all the other districts.
So some of these Democrats, these urban Democrats, have to be willing to give up some of their comfort.
You can't even get Charlie Rangel to give up his seat.
Correct. Correct. And that is a problem.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, we need districts more evenly matched so that we can, when we have an election, we can actually vote the way we feel and we'll get some results out of it.
Another thing that might help is if people actually came out to vote.
Well, but the problem is people don't see things change when they come out to vote.
That's true.
And they're discouraged from doing so.
Yeah.
I mean,
vicious cycle.
In the New York primary, you know how much the turnout was this time of eligible voters? 9%.
There you are. Nonetheless, Andrew Cuomo got quite a shock when Zephyr Teachout got a third of the vote and took several counties.
Yes.
We're getting a little too inside baseball. Let's move instead to international news.
Well, in Serbia, there was a brutal attack on a German activist who was at a LGBT conference. There were speedy arrests in this case.
3 arrested.
But one of the only silver lining here is that the Germans are so upset, the German government's so upset about this, they're saying, look, Serbia, you want to be in the EU? You got to stop stuff like this, and you got to have pride parades and all this other kind of stuff that you've been stopping if you want to get on the gravy train.
In fact, there's a Pride March scheduled for next weekend on the 28th, and there was some concern about whether the government would allow it because they've stopped them in the past, claiming they couldn't protect them. But now that this attack has happened, they're actually more likely to protect the Pride Parade and allow it to happen. We'll see. In St. Petersburg, Russia, they're about to have Queer Fest, September 18th through 27th. Discussions, art, a big open festival, but they're concerned about threats, harassment, anything could happen there. They've had a mixed record.
Speaking of threats and harassment, if you were wondering how ISIS felt about us, and I don't imagine you are, they released a video saying that Muslims need to live in ISIS-controlled areas to avoid having their kids educated by gays.
Or drug dealers or pedophiles who are animals, dirty people, and the worst of creatures.
Was not holding out too much hope that they were going to be on our side.
No, absolutely not. And they're not on our side in the African country of Chad, where they've passed a new law mandating 20 years imprisonment for homosexuality. Do you have more details?
No,
on that?
I don't.
Okay.
The Australia Football League is reassessing their co-sponsorship of their sponsorship by Royal Brunei Airlines. The AFL there pledged in April to eliminate homophobia. Now, I want to confess, I did visit the Brunei Gallery at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London when I was there.
Whoa.
Well, it's a museum that they have, and that's who it's named for. Should I have stayed out?
Probably. In Egypt, the government is on a new tear doing intense surveillance of Facebook, Twitter, and Skype. There's some concern that one of the things they're looking for is gay people to arrest and harass.
Gay people, they're saying there's a moral panic spreading and the fear of arrest is rising. An Egyptian band has a song about stopping she-men in skinny jeans. I didn't know that such men wore skinny jeans, but there you are.
Let's get a little good news. In Brazil, a judge has approved a birth certificate that includes 2 moms and 1 dad and 6 grandparents.
Everybody wants to get into the act.
Well, the point is, you have a lesbian couple.
Yes, of course.
There is a man who is the biological father of the child. Why not acknowledge all of them?
Let it reflect reality. Stop being so binary.
Exactly.
And the United States granted asylum to Ugandan LGBT advocate John Long Jones Abdallah Wambiri, Mary Bonato's group represented him. He's a member of Spectrum Uganda, an LGBT group. It's the first granted asylum since the horrible bill there passed in February.
Because he is a known activist in Uganda. He's been outed in the newspapers there. He's been harassed. He's been the subject of death threats. He's been arrested. He's been evicted from his home. And he's been beaten up. So the U.S. should be granting him asylum.
By the way, how did you vote on Scottish independence? Well, you'll know by the time you watch this show.
Exactly.
But an online poll said 52% of gays were for it.
And in lighter United Kingdom news, the group Stonewall UK has been very successful in its little campaign to sell rainbow laces.
Got a picture of that.
They're campaigning against soccer homophobia. They had 50,000 pairs of rainbow laces for sale, and they've had 100,000 requests for the laces.
All right. And we have a picture of this, too. In New Zealand, 2 non-gay men got married. They did it to win a contest to see how far 2 good mates would go to win a trip to the Rugby World Cup in England, sponsored by a radio station. They said their vows were going to focus on their deep friendship, but gay groups condemned, and they think they're going to last for 2 years at least, but a gay group condemned the wedding as an insult to those who fought for same-sex marriage. The radio station promoted it as something negative that straight men would not do. But you know what? Once you pass the law, anybody can do it.
Exactly.
People can do it for benefits.
I'm going to call it a good thing that they were, relaxed enough to go ahead and do that. God knows straight couples get married for all sorts of reasons.
Well, they say I don't know where I got this from. 7% of straight couples got married for benefits.
Well, some of them marry to let someone come into the country.
Whatever.
And they get paid for it.
Be careful about that, though. They'll investigate you, and they're very tough.
And here's a story I really like this year. In Israel, 43 reservists who were part of a very, what do I want to call it, a hardline military unit, quit because of the treatment of Palestinians. And one of the things they objected to was that the government was surveilling and blackmailing LGBT Palestinians to get them to turn over names of others who were supposedly dangerous.
Israel, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be pink washing, make people think you're liberal on gay. Well, they are liberal on gay issues, but to do this is heinous.
And then there was a column in the New York Times today by a guy who said that he had spent a few days with Edward Snowden and heard some more details of what Snowden had uncovered in the National Security Agency files, and a lot of it was about the U.S. just handing over tons of data to the Israeli government that was inappropriate and much too much.
And speaking of leakers, Chelsea Manning wrote an article about how we can beat ISIS, and I haven't read it yet, so more next week.
Tune in next week.
Well, just Google it. Chelsea Manning, ISIS. It'll come up.
Okay. AIDS news.
All right. Well, I mean, I want to mention Ebola first, since it may take us all. It's deja vu all over again. Cases and deaths have doubled in the last few weeks. We're paying a price for leaving all these areas without any kind of health infrastructure. Now, but the thing is, if the virus mutates and becomes transmissible by air, it could be 1918 all over again. And experimental drugs are being fast-tracked as never before, which is something that I think we can thank ACT UP for helping fast-track drugs, then make them look at that system. I mean, when I say fast-track now, they're talking about weeks, not years. But in the old days, it was decades.
But one of the parallels with the AIDS epidemic is the problem of stigma driving people underground, because in the African countries that are affected, people do not want to reveal that their family members have Ebola because they think that's going to get them in all sorts of trouble with other people and the government. So they're hiding them. And so that is helping spread the epidemic instead of being able to stop it in its tracks. So that's a very bad situation.
I mean, Fauci was on television saying we don't have anything to worry about here, but I don't agree with that.
When Fauci says you have nothing to worry about, you're in trouble. In Seattle, a judge has ordered an HIV-positive man to stop infecting others.
Well, he's alleged to have infected 8 people over 4 years. The health department there says, we're not trying to criminalize sexual behavior, we're trying to protect public health.
But he's been counseled 5 times and he's not paying attention.
He could face jail or fines if he doesn't comply.
It's just our weekly reminder that you must protect yourself and not rely on others to protect you.
That there are bad people, and I would call this person a bad person if he's not protecting. If he's
who knows?
Everybody should use protection.
We don't know him. We don't know what his story is.
You know. Cardinal Francis George says Catholics are forced to live under pro-gay, are being forced to live under a pro-gay state religion akin to Sharia law. It's not particularly AIDS news, but it ended up here on my notes.
Well, I'll go with that because the church music director, or the school music director who got fired in Illinois, went to talk to Cardinal George, as we said last week, and was so appreciative of the Cardinal meeting with him and praying for him. And then Cardinal George comes out with this nonsense.
I want to go back to the Seattle story. I'm not obviously, in favor of HIV criminalization. Yeah. I do think all of us have to be responsible, no matter what we have. You got a cold or something, I think you need to be responsible in your sexual acts about not passing that and all those kinds of things.
You hate it when I come to do the show with a cold.
And yes, and I mean, that is something I would feel guilty about if I knowingly had any kind of thing that could be transmitted, that I wasn't upfront with my partner about it.
And my suggestion that we don't know enough about this is we don't know the guy's mental state.
Yes.
We don't know any of the circumstances.
And he's not being given criminal penalties here.
Which, yet.
Okay.
Yet. But again, we repeat the warning, protect yourself.
September 18th is National HIV/AIDS and Aging Awareness Day.
Yeah. Gilead, which has been under attack by ACT UP and others for putting a $1,000 a pill price on its hepatitis C drug, of which you have to take 84 pills, thereby costing $84,000, has made an agreement to sell the drug in India for $10 a pill. This is to sort of prevent the generic companies from selling it even cheaper, and they put all sorts of restrictions on where they're going to make it available for this price. And it's still at $10 a pill, probably unaffordable for a lot of people.
But as we said, for people who are into medical tourism, save your $84,000 here and fly to India and have a vacation and take your pills for however long you have to do it. It's less than a year.
That's true. That's a thought.
There was this, you're going to hear about this. I wasn't going to mention this, but there was this
We're going to hear about it right now?
Well, this controversial men who have sex with men study out of Ontario that said of 693 new HIV infections, 51% had anal sex with a condom, 33% anal sex without a condom, 16% oral sex, suggesting condom failure. But Peter Staley says to us, that is self-reported condom use.
Yeah.
He says equating exaggerated condom use with condom failure is wrong. But I'm sure that this study will be misused against us.
Yes.
So watch out for it.
Yes.
And use condoms. Of
Please.
course.
Please.
Don't use it as an excuse not to use condoms.
Right. Or PrEP or other techniques or whatever.
Right. All right, entertainment news?
Certainly.
There's a new MTV teen comedy called Faking It, and it's going to explore what it's like to be intersex.
This is actually season 2, and I recommended it to you last season because it was an actually kind of charming and well-done high school story centering on two high school girls who pretended to be in a lesbian relationship because they thought that would make them cooler, and then it turned out that one of them actually was a lesbian and had a crush on the other one. But it was really well done and had a lot of clever moments, and now they're adding an intersex storyline for the second season. Faking It on MTV.
Yes, it's only new if you don't watch Gay USA or The Soup.
Congratulations to Cheyenne Jackson and Jason Landau, who got married in California.
Cheyenne Jackson is a great Broadway, so we have a picture of them there.
Yeah.
Cheyenne Jackson is a great Broadway star, Broadway musical star, also does plays. He's there on the right.
Does TV a lot.
Okay.
And they've been together a year and they got married in California. Mourning the death of Bob Crewe at age 82.
Yes.
He was a fabulously successful and important songwriter, out gay, writer, actor, artist, singer, dancer, producer. He wrote many of the Four Seasons big hits: Sherry, Big Girls Don't Cry, Walk Like a Man.
He's a character in Jersey Boys, although rather exaggerated his gayness.
Can't Take My Eyes Off You, written by a gay man.
Yeah, they didn't exaggerate his gayness, but I think they made him a more stereotypical character than he was.
He wrote Lady Marmalade for LaBelle.
Yeah.
He wrote the soundtrack to Barbarella.
One of the greats.
Yeah.
I've been telling you about the movie Pride. I had heard that it was going to come out in the 19th. It's coming out on September 26th here. I met Jonathan Blake, who was one of the people portrayed in it, and he says that they really did capture the essence of what happened when gay activists aided striking coal miners in 1984. I asked Tom O'Neill, why isn't this being considered for the Oscars? Because it really is a terrific movie. He says it doesn't have a U.S. co-producer. I didn't know that that was something that was important. And he said there's also no money for a campaign.
Yeah.
So the Oscars are basically films that can throw tens of millions of dollars at these campaigns.
Does this make 3 times today I've accused you of being naive?
But you know, some of these indie films sometimes break through.
Only if they're made by Harvey Weinstein.
I was just going to say that.
Well, why don't you tell us about the plays you saw this week?
Well, the first play I saw was Fatal Weakness by George Kelly. Grace Kelly's uncle wrote Philadelphia Story, gay. It's about infidelity among the rich. And I'm just going to say this was a rare miss from the Mint Theater, whose motto is, "Lost plays found here." So I love the Mint, but I think this was a miss. And then the other one is the revival of This Is Our Youth, Kenneth Lonergan's This Is Our Youth, which I saw with Mark Ruffalo back in 1996, and I thought it was terrific. Here it's with Kieran Culkin and Michael Cera. Basically, I guess it's being made on Broadway because they're two movie stars.
Yes.
And they're good. It's very well done, but I'm sort of wondering, why are we doing a play about slackers in 1982? I mean, you could say that about anything, but I mean, it's well done. It got a lot of laughs in the audience. I just was, let's tell today's stories.
Well, here's something
Is that too much to ask?
Here's something I never thought I'd say. Why are they continuing The View without Barbara Walters?
Oh my God. I watched the first new episode with Rosie O'Donnell and the new cast.
I've watched the first 3 episodes.
Well, I know, one was enough. I mean, and to
Terrible.
me, Whoopi, you're getting so right-wing.
Well, she's always had a streak of that, and now she's defending the Vikings player Adrian Peterson for beating up his kid and saying, well, that's just what you do, and you can't question parents and what they do with their kids. And then she got in a fight with Rosie on the 3rd day.
Who was picking her feet the whole time.
Well, still overbearing, still loud, still talking over everybody.
I like all these people in various contexts, but I just think they've got lousy chemistry now.
Well, I think it takes time to develop chemistry, but they are really unappealing at the moment. And yes, they're getting into these fights over domestic violence and child abuse and really being unappealing. And
they should have hired Ann Northrup to be on that show.
No, that's okay. But they are having the battle of the lesbians in daytime because you've now got Rosie on The View. You've still got Sarah Gilbert on The Talk on CBS, who is now pregnant, thereby one-upping Rosie or trying to catch up with Rosie, who's got 5 kids. So they're both married to their wives. And raising kids. So, but Sarah is the nice version, the vegan version, the pregnant version, and Rosie is the sort of nastier, more negative version.
Well,
but Rosie comes off as the positive one against Whoopi in this child abuse, domestic violence question. Strange, very strange. So I'm not happy about what's going on there in daytime.
No, well, it's one less thing to watch. We have more time to watch The Soup. Can I say The Soup again on the show?
I think it's terrific of you to be promoting The Soup with these things. But we invite you to write to us and let us know what you think of our show and get on our mailing list so you get weekly notices of the headlines and what's going to be on this week.
You will write directly to me, Andy Hum, ANDYHUMM at AOL.com, and you will get a personal response if I'm not off in London or something and putting email on hold or something.
Yeah, but we look forward
to... But I'm around now.
Write to Andy.
You're not going to get rid of me that easy.
He'll pass notes to me, on to me.
I do.
Yes,
I share them with Ann.
Yes, he does. Yes. And we will see you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.